Today we're gonna make something that is, well, at least used to be real popular. I don't see it often again, but it's still a real big staple on the street food scene in Trinidad and Tobago, and that is boiled corn. Now, back in the day, you go around the Queen's Park Savannah, two things you were sure to see was boiled corn / roast corn and pulori. You don't really see that much these days. I mean, you'd still find it on the Savannah Strip, but before it had the strip, you used to have like individual vendors along with like the coconut vendors selling boiled corn and roast corn and that kind of thing. I really like boiled corn, and boiled corn is not a complicated thing to make at all. Simple ingredients, you know, your onion, garlic, some shadow benny, and that kind of thing. Coconut milk, of course. I like to put some hot pepper, a little spice in there. It's a very simple / basic thing to make, but as you know, extremely delicious. So today, I'm gonna show you my simple but very delicious boiled corn recipe. So let me get into it one time. So I'm starting off with one large onion. And for me, it's real important to incorporate, you know, your onion and garlic and thing into this because we want a real flavorful boiled corn. We want no bland boiled corn. And I mean, I'm keeping this recipe vegetarian, but if you wanted to add pigtail and that kind of thing to your boiled corn, obviously you could do that. But today, we're doing it veggie vibes now. So, I'm just gonna dice one large onion. I'm gonna use some garlic as well. I mean, obviously, can't make this without garlic, right? And the amount of garlic and the amount of onion that you use in this, I guess it's up to your preference. Like, you know, you don't have to use the same amount I'm using. This recipe is a loose guide. You could kind of make this your own. You don't have to follow this to a T, right? So I'm going in with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I make it an even 8. 8 cloves, yeah, 8 cloves of garlic. I'm also using one bundle of shadow benny, but what I'm gonna do is separate the leaves from the stems. So I'll use the leaves kind of like the end of the recipe for the fresh herbs, and I'll be sauteing the stems along with the other aromatics. So just gonna get this a fine chop. I like my boiled corn to have like real shadow benny, so a whole bundle is what we're using. And you could use other herbs in this as well. You could use fine thyme, you could use podina, chive if you wanted to, celery. But for me, shadow benny does do the trick. So I have the leaves here. I'm just gonna give it a fine chop. And this is for our fresh herb action at the end of the cooking process. And I like my boiled corn to be spicy, so I'm going in with some Scotch bonnet pepper. I ain't going for too much spice, so I'm just using the flesh and not the seeds. Of course, if you do like your corn spicy, you could use pimento instead of Scotch bonnet pepper. So for the corn, I like to cut it in half. So I'll be cutting this in half, but before I do that, part of the prep for my corn, I like to just kind of score it, going around. And for me, what this does is ensures that, you know, the flavor getting to the bone. I just call this the bone. You might call it the cob or whatever. I just call inside here, inside I see bone, you know, the flavor in the bone. So, give it a little score, and then half it. Again, just kind of give it a little score, going around like that, and then boom. Of course, it helps if your knife is sharp. Now, I was going to use my ruku, well, at least this form of ruku in the recipe, but I have some of the actual fruit here, some of the annatto. So I decided, hey, I'm going to put butter in this dish, so why not make our own, I don't want to say the brand, our own cooking butter. So we're gonna make our own cooking butter here, right? So I have the actual fruit here, I have my butter here, and it kind of at room temperature-ish. I'm just gonna put some of the seeds inside there. And here we're making our own homemade cooking butter here. You know the brand I'm talking about. All you know the brand. I don't have to call the name. Once you have your own annatto or ruku, then you can make your own cooking butter right at home. All natural, no preservatives. Don't know. Right? And right, just like that, we have our own homemade cooking butter, and it's basically just ruku or the annatto mixed with regular butter, and this is going to add that rich flavor to our boiled corn. So yeah, we're in our gear here. Nice. All right, we have our aromatics here cut up and ready. So now let me head over to the stove and let me get this thing going. All right, so we're starting off with our butter into the pot. And there's about 4 tablespoons of butter, 4 heaping tablespoons. Adding our aromatics. And there's the onion, the garlic, shadow benny, and the Scotch bonnet pepper. And I mean, I know some people would just put the liquid in and boil the corn, but for me, you know me, I like to saute my aromatics to extract most flavor out of it. This is how you'll get most of the flavor out the aromatics. So this is definitely an integral part of the process for me. You gotta sweat it, break down the natural sugars, and that way you extract the most flavor out of these ingredients. So we've been sauteing for about 2 minutes. We're looking good now. Now I'm gonna add the corn. Now, what I did not mention about this corn is this is the Canadian sweet corn. This is not the local corn. This corn doesn't take as long to cook as the local corn. So whereas your local corn, you might sometimes even need to pressure cook it for it to be tender. This corn doesn't take that amount of cooking time. This is Canadian sweet corn. So I prefer to use this just to cut down on the cooking time. But of course, if you have your local corn, you'll just know that it'll take a longer time to cook for it to be tender. So I add in 4 cups of coconut milk now. Add in 4 cups of water. Seasoning with salt to taste. Final thing I want to do, even though we have a Scotch bonnet pepper cut up in there already, just add in a next one just for, for good measure. The same float inside there and, release some of the goodness into the pot. All right, so we're going to cover this. It's going to come to a boil at high heat, and then we're going to lower the heat and allow it to simmer for about 45 minutes, and then we'll be good to go. One thing that I should mention is that this thing could bubble over and cause a huge mess on your stove. So you want to kind of leave it either like partially covered like this, or leave the cover off, and yeah, you should be good to go. But do not make the mistake and leave this covered fully and just go and leave it, because you will end up with a huge mess on your stove top. So yeah, just a little tip there to avoid disaster. Okay, so 45 minutes later, the liquid has dried down, so we know that all that flavor penetrate the corn. And now the final touch is to add the remaining shadow benny for that fresh herb action. I just want to give this a toss. All right, now for the moment of truth. Time to dig into this boiled corn here. And as you know, boiled corn is a thing that could stay hot for a real long time. But while I was taking my B-roll and my photos and that kind of thing, it had some time to cool down. So I think we're good to dig in. So let's move this aside, get my little saucer here, grab a piece. And part of my boiled corn experience is getting some of the sauce from in the pot. So just adding some of the sauce here in the bowl, going in for a bite. Just kind of dip it in the sauce. Well, here now, I was supposed to be describing the flavor of this tall way. See what happened? I end up eating all the whole thing and I didn't even get to describe the taste of this thing yet. That's to tell you how good it's going down. I'm sorry for doing all of this, but if your corn is looking like this, when you're done eat it, you ain't really eating corn. If you come by me and I offer you corn and you leave it like this, I go feel like you're wasting my corn. Because all the flavor inside there, all the flavor in the bone. You understand? That's why we let it cook for so long, for the flavor to get in the bone of the corn. See how they get in there? You gotta get in there, you gotta use them teeth, hope the teeth strong. Get in there and, you know, dip it in the sauce too. That's why we have sauce. And get in. The only word I could use to describe the flavor of this boiled corn is rich. It's a real rich flavor, real depth. Because we use the butter with the ruku and then the coconut milk, it gives it that real rich creaminess. And of course, the onion and the garlic bringing out that savoriness in it. And then the Scotch bonnet pepper for a little heat. And to tie it all in and give it that local flavor, we have the shadow benny doing the most. Again, we sauteed the stems with the aromatics, but then we added fresh shadow benny at the end to give it that freshness. This, yeah, 100% local, real best, boiled corn. We on like boiled corn here. So as you can see, this boiled corn recipe was super easy to make, very simple ingredients, but just the right ingredients to make this very delicious. And as I said earlier in the video, if you wanted to make this with your pigtail and that kind of thing, you could go ahead. If you want to make it completely vegan, you could leave out the butter and use vegetable oil or soybean oil as the case may be. But yeah, I'm gonna eat about 6 more of these. So if you like this video, if you like this recipe, please give it a thumbs up and give it a share. If you do try it, post your photos to social media. I would love to see it. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.